Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. This time I'm watching The Horror of the Slaver Ant by Kurzgesagt. I know quite a bit about ants and about a lot of different species, but the slaver ant is one that I never really looked into much. It just didn't seem that interesting. I mean, they probably just steal eggs from other colonies or something like that. I mean, it's in the name slaver ant, I'm assuming that's it. But hey, if Kurzgesagt made a video, maybe there's something more, maybe there's something interesting about them. So let's see.
Everything changed when the Slaver Nation attacked. What used to be a thriving colony is now a captured country. Slaves do the work, serving their new masters until they die, only to be replaced by new victims harvested in
they
brutal
just
raids.
Steal eggs
but let's
from...
go back to the beginning.
Oh, that's a disgusting shot. So they just steal eggs from other colonies and they raise them as their own.
The world
is it really slavery though?
Is claiming millions of lives every day. But in the brutal world of ants, straight-up war is not the only way. Around
cutting
50
into his
ant
abdomen.
species practice slavery, the most extreme division. Around 50 ant species practice
50
slavery,
ant species.
the most extreme division of labor.
That's
we don't know
less
how
than I
this began, but some ant species perfected this cruel trade.
I would expect at least a couple hundred.
Polyagus, the most intense of the slaver ant tribes. There are different species, but generally they're 4 to 10 millimeters long, with brown to blackish bodies and sickle-shaped mandibles.
The only slaver ant I know is the Formica
so
sanguinea.
much that they've lost their ability to
this
care
is a
for
completely
themselves.
different species.
They don't
They can't
clean,
even care for
build
themselves.
nests, care for their brood, or feed themselves. They only exist for raiding. Slaves make up 80 to 90% of the ants in their colonies.
So the slaves do all the work,
and a single
these
queen
ones
control
are just for
thousands of
raiding.
slave ants. We'll summarize and simplify what we know about Polyagus into one grand story.
They've basically evolved into being useless, unless they have slaves.
Let's witness the cruel banality of nature. The raid. It all begins
Except
on a wild
they're not really true slaves.
Witness this colony of over 10,000 Formica ants, genetically cousins of Polyagus, who build a thriving nest underground. They are a widespread genus. Some species are good fighters, some great builders, and some cattle farmers, often welcomed by humans because they hunt vermin that hurt forests. Nobody noticed the lone Polyagus scout that briefly showed up this morning before she bolted away again. The attack begins in the early afternoon. The scout returned from her mission to find the Formica nests. She dances erratically
and now the raiding party is being assembled.
Mass recruit more and more ants until a large raiding party of 1,000 warrior S's has formed. A close-packed, well-organized column.
1,000 ants may not seem like a lot, but have you ever seen 1,000 ants in one place?
Arrives at the Formica colony,
it's a pretty big amount.
Almost immediately. Dozens of attackers begin digging and clearing up debris from the nest's entrance to make it easier to storm. As soon as they're done, hundreds of the attackers rush inside.
How do they get in though?
The defenders vastly outnumber their attackers.
Yeah, there's way more defending ants.
Warriors able to shoot at it. But instead of fighting back effectively, they seem confused and scatter rather than fighting back.
They must have some sort of confusion
resistant to the acid sprays of the defenders. And so
that's useful.
If a defense is forming, the attackers use their mandibles to pierce and kill. There are a few different ideas as to why Polyagus attacks are so efficient, and one of the most fascinating ones is chemical warfare. Instead of relying on
they do confuse them with their pheromones.
A propaganda pheromone that makes the defenders panic, unable to mount an organized defense. The attackers have nothing to gain
kind of
from
like the Russians in Kursk.
hand-to-hand combat other than immense casualties. What's more, they actually want their victims to survive so that they can be raided again in a few weeks.
Of course they do.
As the
Why
raid
kill
unfolds,
your main supply of
deep into the colony,
new slaves?
Looking for their most valuable possession, the colony's
That would not
babies.
be beneficial in the slightest.
They grab the pupae and larvae that will make up the next generation of Formica and carry them out of the nest. Hundreds are abducted and brought back to the Polyagus colony in this raid alone. Well, most of them. A few unlucky ones are eaten as a sort of snack. The surviving victims will be turned into slaves.
See,
after about an hour, the raid is over and the Formica can begin to recover.
They're going to create even more
is to make even more ants.
Exactly.
A decent-sized colony can forfeit
They replace the losses
and
they create even more to get a stronger defense.
Although in this case, while the raid was going on, something even more sinister happened. Hold that thought though, because how are Polyergus turning ants into slaves? How to brainwash ant slaves. Ants conquered
it's
almost
not
the entire
really
planet
slavery.
over 100 million years ago.
Not
They
true
owe their
slavery.
success to being social animals that perfected chemical communication. Chemical signals and cues let ants know what their colony needs and what each
See,
individual
these
should
ants,
do. And most
they get
importantly,
born
in this case, who
as
is a
part of
friend
that
or
colony
foe.
now, so it's not really true
Slave-making
slavery.
ants are
They
much
think
less
they're
social
part
than
of this
other ant
colony.
species. Some species miss a lot of the genes other ants have to make communication possible. In a sense, they are bad at talking to each other. So it may be that as Polyergus ancestors started to abduct other ants, they lost the ability to collaborate and work together productively.
Oh, so
Soon
that's
after the
why.
stolen Formica offspring have been brought to the slaver colony, they are progressively covered in Polyergus pheromones.
Yeah,
They
they
are
think they are part of this
imprinted,
colony,
similar
so
to
it's
a
not
duckling
true
who
slavery.
imprints on its mother after birth. When the new slaves hatch, they behave as though they are part of the Polyergus colony
exactly.
and begin to work for them unconditionally.
It's not
keeping
true
them
slavery
clean,
because they
caring for the
are
next
doing
generation of
everything
slaves
willingly.
and masters, hunting for food and feeding their enslavers mouth to mouth.
They're not really being
This sort of
abused or anything,
brainwashing
so
goes so far
not
that
true
if they
slavery.
encounter free Formica ants in the wild, they will treat them as enemies. In a sense,
I mean, most
they're not
ants
true
do
slaves,
that.
as they serve
yeah,
willingly
not
and
true
show
slaves.
no interest in freedom. It's more like violent abduction and adoption, which doesn't make
Very
things
much.
that much better. And as the Formica only live for a few months, a constant new supply of victims is necessary. To survive,
It's just a
Polyergus
never-ending
can never
cycle.
stop enslaving. How to make new slave colonies. How are
The queen
new
usually has to
Polyergus
take
colonies
over an
created?
existing nest, I
After all,
think.
Polyergus workers are so useless that a queen can't start a new colony without slaves. But how does she make slaves without warriors? It turns out there are
She
two
takes
main
over an
strategies.
entire colony, I'm
The more
guessing.
dangerous one might unfold
That's
during a
what
raid
they
like the
usually
one we
do.
witnessed before. A young Polyergus queen silently follows the raiding party. Using the
And she
chaos
kills
of the
the queen.
invasion, she's able to find her way to the Formica queen and kill her, taking over the shaken colony. Although such a victory may be very short-lived.
Yeah, because now the
Polyergus
two
do not
Polyergus
tolerate
will be
other
at
slaver
war with each
colonies
other.
within their hunting ground. They raid each other
It's like
fiercely
you just
too,
killed
and
the
can
main
destroy the
supply.
competing colonies
Now
nearby.
you will be at
So
risk of
while
being
this
attacked.
tactic sometimes works, it is pretty dangerous.
It's risky.
Another young queen is going for a different strategy. She's looking for a Formica colony that is further from her birthplace, attacking a whole colony on her own. She bolts through an entrance, pushing aside confused ants that
And
try to
she's-
stop
yeah,
her,
she's using the
releasing a
pheromones to
powerful
confuse the
appeasement
other ants.
pheromone that drives defenders away. She has only
And
a
then she
short
goes
time
and kills
window
the
to
queen,
find
or
the
she
Formica
dies.
queen deep in the hostile nest. Once she finds her target, both queens engage in a fight to the death. The Polyergus queen is well equipped with her sharp mandibles.
Oh.
She bites and rips into her victim for about half an hour before she
Jesus,
finally
that's
calms
brutal.
down. Between her bites, she licks the chemical surface of the dead Formica
And she
queen,
masks
covering
herself with the
in her
pheromones to make
pheromones.
the Formica
When
ants
she's
think,
done with this
yeah, I'm
macabre
your
ritual,
queen.
Formica workers approach her. Formica by her intense smells, they start grooming and feeding her as though pledging their allegiance to their new ruler. She still might not be done though. Formica colonies often have multiple
Yep.
queens who all need to be defeated, which is not guaranteed. Often, attacking queens will be stopped by a phalanx
It's
of
why
workers
it's
that
better
rip her
for one of
apart
these queens
or
to
are
find a
defeated in
small
raw
nest which
battle.
only has a
But
certain
if she
amount
does
of
manage
workers.
to kill all the queens,
'Cause
the
there's
colony
almost
has been
definitely only
taken
gonna be
over,
one queen
and
if
the
it's a small
enslaved
colony.
brood will begin to serve a new queen, the usurper. She now
The
begins
usurper.
laying eggs that are cared for by her new slaves until new Polyergus ants hatch that will soon start new raids on neighboring colonies. No matter what we humans do, quietly below our feet, the world war of the ants is raging, with wild and horrible strategies fought by billions of individuals every single day. Polyergus will continue to hunt for slaves, as to stop raiding would be their demise. And
That's how
in the war of
works.
the ants, there is no
It's horrible.
giving up.
Nothing you can do about it. Polyergus slaves are not... They're not true slaves because the ants are not... They're not being abused. They're not held against their will. They're not being refused payment. They are just part of the colony. It's not really slavery. It's like you said, it's just abduction and adoption. And the quote-unquote slaves are just none the wiser. They have no idea. They were born in this colony, they just became part of this colony. They never knew anything else, so they're not really true slaves. So the name Slaver Ant, it's not wrong, but it's not correct. I was planning on starting a third channel where I make videos about ants and tarantulas, and I think I'm gonna do that soon because Solenopsis fugax had their nuptial flight not long ago, and I caught 32 queens. Of course, most of them died because Solenopsis fugax is a species that is incredibly difficult to start, but a lot of them survived, and I even have at least one colony with 3 queens in it which laid eggs, so I might make some super colonies. Soon enough, you might see a third channel from me. I have a second one which is a gaming channel which I'm going to start making videos on soon, but after that there's also going to be a third channel where I make videos about my exotic animals. I don't think I'm going to have time for all of this, man. Well, anyway, I hope you enjoyed. Leave a like, subscribe, the usual YouTube stuff, and I will see you in the next video.